straight into sharing with you what would be the objectives of today's webinar. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for your time. I think we are here because of the main mission of the Linking Tourism and Conservation Network, which is to identify and support those champions in the tourism sector that take the objectives of the Convention on Biological Diversity as one of their corporate goals as well, and that particularly contribute to what used to be Aichi Target 11. It still is until the next framework is adopted, but basically the point is that for many years, visitation and tourism has been a sector that has been essential for the maintenance, for the establishment, and for the management of protected areas globally. So nature tourism, or tourism to parks and protected areas, both private as public, has been an essential strategy, and in the view of the network that is that comes together under the Linking Tourism and Conservation Group, it is probably the most important factor. Just as a matter of protocol, can I ask everyone to mute their microphone?
Thank you.
Peter, can you do that as a moderator?
That was funny. No, why did I go inside the tray broke? Because all the mason jars are on it, and it's like.
Yeah, no.
Okay, good, wonderful, thank you. So as I was saying, the basic assumption in this webinar today is that tourism has been a sector that contributes fundamentally to protected areas. And each of you probably is very much involved in this. The LT&C network is made up of experts and operators, people who have direct interest in running tourism businesses that benefit conservation. So in this sense, I'm Oliver Hillel. I'm with the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity. Co-organizing this webinar with me today is Peter Prokosch, who has opened the event, and which you know. And we will benefit today from listening to examples, to LT&C examples and champions that will share with us how they are facing the current enormous challenge that the tourism sector is facing with the COVID-19 pandemic. Basically, and Peter, please come in if you feel that you'd like to complement that, but I think the point is the following. The champions that are brought together under the LT&C network, and those who still aren't, but who are champions for protected areas, are facing the current tourism sector crisis like everyone else. However, just as Georges Monbiot, the person behind Greta, has said, when we are facing critical government investments into the restoration and recuperation of the economy, we should not resuscitate those who created the problem in the first place. We should help those who are the solution. And LT&C best practice examples are the solution. Many of you, those who will speak today, are already part of that. You are contributing to conservation. So what we basically want to hear from you is how you're achieving your survival in those days in which governments don't know which sector to reactivate first, but certainly the tourism sector is mostly affected. Airport movement has been down between 80 and 90%. The UNWTO recently concluded a survey that indicated that more than 90% of tourism destinations globally today have restrictions for the movement of visitors and tourists. So how do you keep our areas living, alive, and biodiverse in a situation that is certainly challenging? You will hear, I'm sure, some good examples as well. I know, as a tourism expert, that in many countries, some tourism champions are surviving. And they're surviving through a variety of strategies, from savings, from diversification, from going to the customer directly and extracting that relation that used to be natural, but now needs to be taken all the way to the origin of the tourist, and of creating a clearer message of need. Tourists and travelers and decision makers in general need to be made aware that when they traveled to those places, they contributed to conservation and to protected areas. And in the absence of that travel, those protected areas need our help. So I'll stop here. Peter, I don't know if you'd like to make any further comments, but as for me, I would just like to invite all of you to listen in to those experts and to the people presenting. Again, the question is, how are you facing the current situation of a tourism sector crisis, which is part of a global crisis, in relation to your role and in relation to your commitment to preserving the nature that you show to your visitors? Peter, over to you.
Thank you very much, Oliver. As you heard, Oliver is speaking to us from Montreal, from the Secretariat, which runs the Convention on Biological Diversity, one of the most important conventions. And as you all know, and the world is increasingly aware of that biodiversity and the protection of biodiversity is equally important as preserving the climate. I will just introduce you briefly to linking tourism and conservation, to those which are not so familiar yet with us, as we are basically a support organization for the Biodiversity Convention, and their specific goal to set up a global network of protected areas, as they have once formulated in their so-called IG Target 11, where they want to achieve by this year already 70% of the land and 10% of the marine environment to be protected. And that is even a part of what you know as the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 very, very important goal for the whole world, and which lasts till 2030. And certainly at the next meeting of all the parties to the Convention of the CBD, they will set up new goals for 2030 also, and we hope that this will be, as the EU is already showing, a goal to protect 30% of the globe. And we want to make tourism a major part in achieving these important goals. So we have a network globally of members which are distributed to all continents of the world, and representing all sectors of society. And they are also having the role to identify and partly provide that themselves, examples where tourism is supporting protected areas, the establishment of them or the further development of protected areas. We call our members penguins, as this is related to a very important film and the incredible way how the penguins are coming, the emperor penguins, to their breeding areas. And so the march of the penguin is a symbol for achieving a great goal. So we are marching for helping to get protected areas set up. And we have about 45 of these so-called LT&C examples already. You can see them all on our website. And today we have representatives of 5 of them, even more, and they will talk to us today. So there will be, first of all, the Napo Wildlife Center in Ecuador, which we will hear in a minute. Then we will have an example from Northern Canada, which is run by an indigenous community and is around showing the grizzly bears and protecting the grizzly bears there. Then we have a whole set of examples already provided by the Friends of Wallacea, they will give us 3 different examples. One in Romania, one is Guyana, and one is in Croatia. Guyana itself will be there today, and we'll talk about that example in specific. And at the end of our webinar, we will hear from the Red Rocks example in Rwanda from Greg Bakunzi. And now I will give the word to the first speaker, which will be Gabriel from the Napol Wildlife Center. And I give now also the word to Oliver Beck, who will moderate this meeting for the next hour. Thank you, Mark.
Oh, thank you so much. And Gabriel, I'm not going to take a lot of time away from you. I just want to maybe reformulate, because I'm so interested in the debate that's going to happen after all those rich presentations. So I just wanted to ask you, Gabriel, and the others who will share with us. Of course, you can talk about what you are and what you're experiencing, because again, the reason for this webinar is to bring messages to the CBD, to the Convention on Biological Diversity. So aside from the exchanges and the learning about your cases, so let's say what we would like to hear from all of you is, how are you dealing with the tourism operation from a positive perspective? We all know we're facing difficulties. So it's really, what are the lessons that you're learning? Second question is, what do you need to do it better that the CBD, meaning the governments, the national governments, but also the subnational and local governments, the businesses, the industry, what do you need to do better? What is your bottleneck at the moment to being able to take care of your conservation mission better? I hope those questions are clear, but I think if we focus more on those aspects, our conversation later can be richer for us, Peter, myself, and the LT&C experts, because of course what we want to do is take your lessons and share it, not only with the 45 examples that Peter was saying, but with everyone, because definitely we need you guys to make more money than the guys that don't care for conservation. And this is something very innovative in the framework. Everyone is realizing that this time we need to get on the side of businesses making a difference. And so this is what we're trying to do. On to you, Gabriel, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me please share my screen with you guys first, so I can start. Can you please confirm with me that you can see my screen?
Yes, great. Yes, we can see it.
Awesome. Well, as I like to answer the questions Oliver did, and because I want to talk like quite quick about what we are doing at the moment. First of all, I want to thank you for joining me today and to allow me to share with you a little bit more about the Nyangu community and its dream in the rainforest. So just to begin, to let you know where we are, as you know, we are in Ecuador in South America, and we are within the Yasuni National Park, which is the biggest national park in continental Ecuador, and we are near El Coca City, right? That's the nearest city from ourselves. And the importance of the tourism and this nature development that the Nyangu community has action in the rainforest is because, well, first they created and they constructed, they built the entire project, and then as they are the owners and the ones running the lodge itself, the entire project, all benefits are reinvested. And why I start with all these little introduction, because I want to make emphasis on the importance of the tourism for the Nyangu community. With this Napo Wildlife Center, the Nyangu have been able to have jobs, to create jobs for the community members and for other people, for nearby indigenous communities as well. With the income of the tourism, the Nyangu people have been able to create a healthcare center which is open to other communities as well, the school and the high school, which is bilingual. So nowadays, children and youngsters can keep and can protect the local indigenous Quechua language. And there's housing projects as well. So, and many other ideas, many other things that have improved the way of life of the Anyangu people in the rainforest. Now, I want to split what we have been doing, our strategies during this time, in two subjects. The first one is related to the operational side, and then the other strategies we are implementing are on sales and marketing. And well, first operational, because we want to ensure safety not only for our visitors, but for the community itself and for everyone who is working in the project. So, well, we are implementing, in order to clean the rooms and the private areas, we are implementing UV light. Some other places in the city, for example, in Ecuador, are using ammonium, and we cannot use it because it could damage on other products. But we cannot use it because it could damage the environment where we are located. So we're using UV light. And then in all shared, we have the advantage that all shared areas are open. Well, because the rainforest itself is warm. So there are no windows in most of the place. And we have now timing. So for example, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so it won't be crowded. And we have put more space between tables, things like that. So there's gonna be a social distance. And additionally, we have to know that here in Ecuador, there's in place a strict law where everyone must use face mask when he's sharing with other people who is not living with you. You must use a face mask at all times, and you have to keep your social distance as well. So these two things are going to be added to the usual operation of the project. And then in terms of sales and marketing, and I put these strategies here too, because we must remain in the market. So we must remain in the people's minds, and we must remain able, or we must be able to approach those people willing to find different responsible community projects of tourism worldwide. So we put emphasis on some things we do. For example, we in the social network, right? So we put emphasis on the benefits for the community, the quality of the service, the protection we do to the environment. And additionally, we have tried to participate in spaces where it won't be a charge for the community because we are not receiving any income since the lockdown, where we can be awarded, or say, recognized for the job we do. That's how this year we were selected by Green Destinations as one of the top 100 destinations in the world, where TripAdvisor gave us the Traveler's Choice Award for 2020. And the World Travel Awards, well, they allow us to participate paying no fees this year, and we are recognized as Ecuador's leading green hotel for third year in a row. And of course, linking tourism and conservation, which is a very important partner for us. One extra thing that we did as well was having the Safe Travels seal from the World Travel and Tourism Council, which did cost nothing to us, but we obtained this seal because we developed a biosafety protocol following their standards, the local health ministry standards as well, so we can ensure we can give we can give our visitors an extra insurance that they're gonna have a biosafety during their visit to ourselves. And then one extra thing we are studying and we are trying to go through is having a partnership with CAF, which is Charities Aid Foundation America, who can help us to have another source of income from charities and donations. So we are going through a process to work with them in order to have an extra income. I must say that the Yasuni National Park is the only national park here in Ecuador which has not been opened yet. So we are not working, we are not able to operate back again and implement the biosafety protocol I just mentioned. I want to answer here the second question Oliver said. What do we need to do better is having a better understanding from the local government, because we don't know what to do, what to offer, or what to present to the local government now in order to be able to restart operations under a new scheme with the biosafety protocols. And then how are we dealing now? Well, the good thing is that the Anyangu community has all decisions taken always as a community. So many years ago, the Anyangu people decided to keep some savings for difficult times. And that's how the community is surviving now. The thing is that they didn't save like millions of dollars. So we are in the need to develop alternatives like these charities and donations, or just having a deeper approach with local government in order to restart operations. We are working on that, so we hope to restart to mid-December. But well, those are things that we have had to deal with. And well, that's pretty much. This is a summary of what we did on sales and marketing. And one additional thing we are doing as well, as we haven't had the authorization from local government to restart operations since last September, we're just refunding and changing dates to our bookings, the bookings we already had. So we don't want to do that for the ones we have for December, but we will have to if that's the case. And well, that's pretty much. I try to be as quick as possible, and well, because of the timing, and well, just look forward for any question or any doubt you may have.
Thank you, Gabriel. Maybe Peter, if you allow me, just a few quick comments, because Gabriel, you made a great contribution. Thank you, because I think this. You just clarified a lot of the questions, and you provided, in fact, answers. I just want to make a few comments. I know that, for instance, the World Bank is preparing, I don't know to what level and how they're doing it, systems of loans, emergency loans for businesses in the tourism industry and in the tourism sector, sorry. And in this view, it is important to at least manifest to not only the local government, as you were saying, but to all levels of government, even to the World Bank, that, you know, that you need that kind of help. Because if you don't say it, you know, maybe they don't even know that. What I know, for instance, is that the World Bank is preparing series of very strategic loans to some companies and some corporations and some community-based initiatives as well, particularly in areas that are strategically important to the World Bank's strategic in you know, objectives. So I think particularly in your situation, in a protected area, or, you know, as part of the management structure, in fact, of a protected area, community-led protected area, I think you could qualify for a number of such initiatives. And I think it is the obligation of all levels of government now to help in that. You mentioned awards and recognitions. You mentioned global standards. Those are very good points for us in the LT&C. So thank you for all those examples. Looking for extra income has also been, in every discussion I've heard, a very important component. How else can I make my assets, my natural assets, how can I monetize them? Because that's what you need to do right now. So I think this is, in my first reaction, what I'd like to bring to you. Also, for instance, in the case of local government, again, you need to say it. How many jobs, how many families, how many hectares of protection are you awarding? How many benefits from the water, from the air, from carbon offsets? All of that needs to be made clear to all levels of government, because I think one thing that we all face in the COVID-19 pandemic in the tourism sector is what I call the safety of no. Governments are very often in a situation to say, I don't know much how to do, I don't know, close. It's the easiest thing, I close. Then nobody can tell me I didn't do anything, I closed. Well, you know, but of course now everyone has long discovered that with the closing comes a lot of responsibilities, including the responsibility of keeping not only the jobs, but I want to say that for your example, Gabrielle, it's about the empowerment of communities as well. The communities that operate your place, they are not only benefiting, they're running the means of production, they're designing the product, they're getting contacts, international contacts, they're all establishing networks all over the world. This is the big value that comes to them too. And I think this all needs to be taken so that local governments can also understand that there is a co-responsibility. Sometimes no is essential. Sometimes you got to close because that's what's happening. You know, in some places, we know that the pandemic is claiming too many lives. You've got to close. There's no other alternative, yes. But in many cases, informing local governments in other levels of different experiences like the ones that you're you know, creating standards. How can you assure people that you're doing all the right things? How can you assure them that you are doing the safest possible standards? This is where I also think, thank you so much. I saw the LT&C best practice case there, and that made my heart be happy because I hope that somebody buys your product because of those logos that you have. Thank you very much. Peter, over to you.
Oh, thank you, Oliver. I think we should quickly go now to North America, to Canada, and hear about another indigenous community, which is being presented by Dallas Smith. Dallas, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good morning from Western Canada.
Good morning.
Morning. So, Peter, I'm still having some technical difficulties. If you can throw my presentation up, I'd love to get into it.
I will share my screen and find your presentation.
I appreciate that.
Oh, wait a minute, where is it?
So while Peter's pulling that up, good morning, everybody from around the world. It's really an honor to be part of this session and seeing how many groups are struggling like I am. We own a grizzly bear viewing lodge that my coalition of 5 First Nations bought 4 years ago. Our clientele is 90% Night Inlet Lodge. Our clientele is 90% outside of North America. So with COVID the way it is right now, we have not been open for a year. And while we're taking bookings for next year, we know that we still won't be able to meet our opening date right now with the way things sit. So it's caused us some significant concern. We've started looking at other options to use the capacity and infrastructure that we have, but unfortunately anything that we can do to try support the lodge right now would be detrimental to our existing business. We are in a secluded inlet on the coast of British Columbia in the Great Bear Rainforest. We have tremendous mountains and heli skiing opportunities around us, but the introduction of bringing helicopters into our lodge would scare the bears away from the area that we view them in later on in the year. So unfortunately, until vaccines and that become a little bit more prevalent, we're in a bit of a holding pattern. Maybe next slide, please, Peter. This is nice. I have an assistant. I've never had one before. So here's a totem pole that we resurrected at the lodge, that we put up at the lodge when we first opened, after we took over ownership. We're one of the first lodges to do grizzly bear viewing in North America. It's a small lodge. It's 18 guest rooms, but it is quite secluded. We have 5 elevated grizzly bear viewing towers. We have numerous boat-based viewing operations where we get within literally meters of these tremendous beings. We also offer whale watching tours, hiking and kayak tours that are guided, and interpretive walks to educate guests about not only grizzly behavior, but also the research that we're doing. When we bought the lodge, we had a very good relationship with the previous owner. And one of the things that was always important to us was to make sure that doing this actual industry of viewing bears and having an impact on them wasn't a negative impact. So every year we do more and more studies based on when people are at the lodge, when people aren't at the lodge, so we understand the impact of us actually being in the boats viewing them or being in the towers viewing them. So we have an extensive science program at the lodge that's helped us just make the best decisions that we can. The Great Bear Rainforest has, you know, I believe the acronym, or I believe the analogy is, in the Great Bear Rainforest, there's enough protected areas to fill Belgium on the coast of British Columbia, just to put that into a bit of perspective. So we have numerous connected protected areas throughout the area. And since we bought the lodge, we've also started to develop what's called indigenous protected areas, similar to what Gabriel was talking about, where we haven't asked the province or we haven't asked the federal government. We've simply used our First Nations rights and title to claim jurisdiction to these areas and put in management practices that we feel benefit both the bear, the habitat, and the people who live in it, which is us being in remote communities. Next slide, please. So some of our conservation efforts, we realize that we can't always ask government. While we do write proposals and look for as much government support as we can, we've learned that we've kind of had to pick up the baggage ourselves to do a lot of this work. So we've created some relationships with some philanthropic communities from the tech sector in San Francisco who help us with some of our research. And we also have a very open working relationship with the universities in British Columbia for a lot of research to be done at in our lodge and at our area. And it's very symbiotic. They're able to stay out there. They're actually able to work. So they're out there doing their research for 3-4 hours a day, sometimes at night. And then they come and help tie up boats or tour visitors around and things like that. So we've tried to be as efficient as we can with the limited space that we have. So we limit the impact and keep that exclusive experience of being out in nature and having that distance from urban society. We're always updating our studies. That's one of the things that we feel is important. We can't take studies from 20 years ago and simply continue to make decisions based on those studies. So we're always upping our science game, and we've realized a little bit of notoriety in the last couple of weeks where Bear ID. This is kind of like Jason Bourne sort of thing. We're using visual cameras that we have placed throughout our territories, and we've built some software and some algorithms that help us 98% identify the bears that exist in our territories. So we're able to better track them and manage them and understand the actual impacts. So if the bear leaves the viewing area, where is it going? Where is it looking for food? Is there food in those areas? And we're able to take all that data and be able to make better policy decisions going forward. So it's really important that we get the science down. And it's been very invigorating for us to have our traditional ecological knowledge merge up with science at the end of the day. As First Nations, we've always known science was out there, and we've always had our traditional ways of doing things. And it's been nice when the science comes.
Oh, we lost you. Hello? Tell us. I will go to the next slide at least. Don't know whether we get him back. Tell us. Nope. Possibility to get you back. Okay, we see also on this slide that
That's interesting. I hope he comes in back, because I see now that his lodge was instrumental in ending the grizzly bear trophy hunt in 2017. This is a significant achievement. Look at him in his traditional habit.
Yes, yes. Now this is a real, very concrete example. So that was probably the last slide. Yeah, I think if you want to.
So maybe I'll just make a few comments, still hoping that he might jump back in. Otherwise, we will probably have to get on to the second or to the next presenter. But let me just, I took a lot of notes. I was very inspired by Dallas' presentation. The first thing that came to my mind is, it hasn't been said enough that open air is the best response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It has been proven scientifically that being in the open air reduces contagion by several orders of magnitude. So in the countries that are still permitting tourism, such as my home country, Brazil, they have created standards in which all hotels are encouraged to keep their guests outside. So what better place to be outside than in the Grizzly Bear Lodge that he shared? I think that should be put as a plus. Being in nature reduces, not only improves your immune response, but it also significantly reduces the risk of contagion of COVID-19. I also liked very much what he mentioned about vaccines. I think the conservation tourism community should say, wherever you guys are, that when vaccine distribution begins, you should be considered a priority too, not the only one. But obviously, I mean, in as much as you can vaccinate the tourism sector that does the best for its sector, that also gives you the ability to provide services to people, you know, in a more timely manner. It needs to be said. So I think vaccine is a point that we should act in the sense of prioritizing support, because I liked what both of them said. Protecting your own people is exactly as important as protecting the health of visitors. I also liked very much what he said about research. A lot of you guys do help in research. A lot of you guys have people who are amateurs in citizen science. They come and visit. So I think focusing on this market could be a pretty good idea to not only focus on them in terms of establishing safe travel protocols to make it easier for them to come to you again and restore revenue sources, but also what Dallas did, and I think it was a beautiful combination of traditional knowledge with scientific knowledge, is that he actually offered to do the science for them. So now what came to my mind is, imagine, Peter, and all LT&C examples, it could be done that we all offer research opportunities for everyday citizens. I would love to be in his Grizzly Bear Lodge. If he's in touch with me, and if he comes closer and sees at an appropriate distance the bear and asks me, what would you like to do, Oliver, with a camera right on his head, and I'd say, okay, go to the right, and he goes to the right. I would love that opportunity. So I think it's an idea that we could consider to facilitate research and citizen science in our collective properties. This is because, you know, one of the points here is the fear. COVID-19 suscitates fear in people. And much of that fear is very well deserved, no problem. But there are parts of that fear that are not deserved. In fact, being out in the open is probably the best thing you can do. And in fact, if you can telecommute, if you can work from wherever you can, you're a journalist, you're a regular visitor to the Grizzly Bear Lodge or to Gabriel's business, then why not be there for some time, writing something, and then you're contributing to the local economy. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Oliver. And we are coming back to the Latin American base of Friends of Valencia, and coming to Sophia Wood, which are coordinating different LT&C examples and will explain us also the whole concept of the Valencia.
Hi, well, thank you so much for inviting me. And actually, Oliver, you made a wonderful segue into our presentation, given how much Operation Valencia and Friends of Valencia depend on research and citizen science for a lot of the work that we're doing. So I'm just going to share my screen. Did that work?
That works, yes.
Perfect. All right. So I'll get started. So my name is Sophia Wood. I am the director of Friends of Wallacea, as well as the country manager for Operation Wallacea's Ecuador programs. And I'm very honored to be invited to speak today alongside such wonderful and exciting, inspiring guests. Today I'll talk to you a little bit about what we've been working on in Operation Wallacea for about 25 years, and the initiative that is Friends of Wallacea that was started at the end of 2019, actually just before the pandemic, and then how we've basically managed to adapt a brand new concept to what has happened over the course of the last year. Oh, there we go. So Operation Wallacea, or OPWAL for short, is a biodiversity research expedition organization that operates in 13 countries around the world, primarily in the tropics and more recently as well in temperate regions. OPWAL was founded in 1997 and has aimed to provide a long-term source of research funding to scientists while offering unique expedition opportunities and research opportunities for high school and university students to work alongside these academics in the field. Every single year, OPWAL takes away around 3,000 students on expedition just from June to August every single year, and their tuition fees basically support these academics to come into the field and do long-term research projects that don't rely on any form of grant funding. And they also fund about 200 academics and 80 plus PhD students over the course of OPWAL's history. We have been able to publish over 500 papers in peer-reviewed journals just based on the research that we've done in this 2-month period, excuse me, every single year for 2 years. And obviously in terms of the success of research, publishing our findings is one of the most important things that we can do, not only to share with other scientists what our work is, but also to basically concrete and demonstrate the value and the conservation value of the places where we're working. And actually, this research has also enabled us to describe over 54, I think it might be 55 now, new species to science, which might sound small, but when you realize how many conservation projects are often built around one tiny endemic species in one place, it actually makes a really big difference. So the OPWAL model basically specializes in collecting data sets that range along large geographic areas and very long periods of time, which is only possible through this tuition fee model that now allows us to have these data sets that last 15, 20, 25 years in some places, and goes beyond the kind of average 3-year grant funding issue that we came across 25 years ago when OPWAL was founded. These data sets have basically allowed us to make a great deal of inways on designing and assessing conservation projects in areas of the world that are usually going unresearched. So many of the areas where we work are areas that are protected or owned by local NGOs, rural communities, or indigenous communities, including in Ecuador, where we work just a few miles down the Napo River from the Napo Wildlife Center on the other side of the river with the Sani Isla Quechua community. So in a very similar area and a similar project to what Gabrielle has spoken about. Obviously, the overarching goal of all of our work is conservation, and we use the data that we collect on these projects, which are largely citizen science projects, largely unskilled researchers working alongside academics, which we've proven works just as well as academics doing the research actually, basically to identify the threats in these areas to wildlife and biodiversity, and design novel conservation strategies that are always in partnership and in support of local communities, realizing that if local communities that own the land and live on the land aren't involved in the conservation from the start, there's no way that's going to be sustainable in the long term. So this data has basically enabled us to apply numerous projects that include gazetting marine protected areas in Mexico, Indonesia, Honduras, as well as many terrestrial areas that are currently under review with national governments. We are able to do these projects through the partner charity that works with Operation Wallacea called the Wallacea Trust, which is a UK registered charity. The OPWAL is a UK biodiversity research organization. Didn't mention that at the beginning. So all this is based out of the UK originally. And basically the Wallacea Trust enables us to receive grant funding when we already have the data and the project developed to be able to say, this is really what needs to be protected and this is why. The Wallacea Trust can help receive that funding, channel it to local NGOs and communities that are working with us, and actually apply a conservation project in reality. Now, the idea is for these projects to have self-sustaining income. And obviously through Operation Wallacea, a large portion of that income looks like tourism, although it doesn't feel like tourism as much because it's these intense expeditions. Obviously it is people crossing borders to visit countries where they've never been before. But we also have worked with numerous other income strategies like REDD+, reforestation, and small agroforestry or artisanal projects that we're working on with numerous communities around the world. One of the applied conservation projects, which is the project that I am currently running, that we started at the end of 2019, is Friends of Wallacea. Now, Friends of Wallacea was developed in partnership with Operation Wallacea as an initiative where we would partner with, starting with op-wall communities where we already had infrastructure or where they already had some level of tourism, to develop regenerative wildlife tourism that basically connects all tourism income directly to the conservation of wildlife. Now, normally our areas where we work with Friends of Wallacea are not in formal conservation areas, which is something we talked to Peter about when we were first submitting our LT&C examples, because many of them are receive some area of indigenous protection, community protection, or some informal national protection, but most of the areas where we work, actually a majority of their protection comes from the tourism and research funding that comes in through OpWall and Friends of Wallacea. We're currently working in Romania, Croatia, South Africa, Ecuador, and then soon to be Indonesia and Guyana, which I won't get into too much detail about because I know Anna-Marie is going to talk about it in more detail after me. But although obviously the pandemic has hit both the expedition industry and the nature tourism industry really hard, OpWall has been able to adapt by doing a lot of our tours virtually, doing a lot of online work experience so that students could still participate in data gathering and data analytics and management, working with expedition resource or kind of expedition management courses. And on the other side, we were actually able to launch Friends of Wallacea programs, although obviously we were shut down through the first 6 months of the pandemic. We were able to launch our European programs by the end of the year, where we had to create a totally new product. This was not in our original plans, to bring out volunteers from around Europe to come to our sites and help us set them up for sustainable tourism in the long term. And this helped students that had their gap years canceled or had their research years canceled come and do a really meaningful hands-on project with us. So why we launched Friends of Wallacea, and then also why we dug our heels in when the pandemic started, because we quite literally launched this in February 2020, was that we realized really that, we know indigenous communities protect 80% of the biodiversity on Earth, and that also the communities that live on the frontiers of conservation areas both feel more effects of climate change, but also have an outsized impact on what happens to biodiversity in those areas because of the direct impact of hunting or farming on these areas. And so we realized that the communities that we worked with and beyond as well potentially could use help in terms of growing a digital presence, providing them with an international sales force so that they could reach the global tourism market and basically be able to scale regenerative tourism models. And one of the reasons why we dug our heels in and are really still convinced of this model is because, as Oliver said, really there are two sides. We really believe that tourists coming out of this pandemic are going to look for areas that are clean, pristine, green, and free of crowds, that they're going to look for these off the beaten path areas where they're going to be able to sit and eat outside, like at the Napa Wildlife Center. And they're going to look for places that there's only 10 other people rather than 500 other people. And that's obviously on the demand side, but on the supply side as well, and you're thinking about the level working with the national government, is that these programs where the income is spent directly in the communities that are protecting wildlife areas and biodiverse areas have, first of all, prevent leakage, keeps 85% or more of the income directly inside the communities that most need it and directly inside the national economy within the borders, and also can often have up to a 3x to 7x multiplier effect in terms of the impact on the communities and the rest of the economy. So we really believe strongly that this is the way that governments should recover from the pandemic or try to focus their tourism pandemic recovery. I'll go really quickly into two of our LT&C examples that kind of take both sides of our model. So the one side of our model, which was the first place we developed in Romania, and we're lucky to have a few people from Fundația Adept on this call today actually watching. So we partnered with a local NGO in Romania called Fundația Adept that works in preserving traditional agriculture and biodiversity in rural Transylvania. And we worked with them to take a beautiful restored house in the ancient village of Bengofa that they were able to restore last year and turn it into a center for biodiversity and research in Transylvania, and therefore basically shuttle some of the tourism income that comes into the neighboring city of Sighișoara that's only about 15 minutes away, but is really the tourism hub of Transylvania, and take some of that income into rural areas in support of farmers and hunters, such that we can provide them income that directly supports the preservation of wildlife and also funds us to be able to send ecologists and naturalists out there to do research throughout the summer. So we launched this in February 2020. It's been a scraping year basically because of the pandemic, but we were able, as we said, to have some interns come out this year, and we did have numerous tourists coming through to go see bears. We do bear safaris as well as bird watching and traditional dinners and lectures about Transylvanian wildlife. So these are all day tours that try to shift tourism income out of urban areas into rural areas around Sighișoara. Our other business model is the longer expedition style projects, which are kind of 7-day projects. As Oliver said, but all of our projects give tourists an opportunity to participate in some of the research and actually have an impact. So they might be doing bird ringing, they might be working with the communities to monitor jaguars, whatever it is that's needed at the time. And these are kind of week-long wildlife service tours that we were developing in partnership with the Guyana Tourism Authority. So again, I won't go into too much detail because I know Anna-Marie is coming right after me. But the idea here was for us to go into Guyana this year, and now it's been pushed back to next year, to work with 3 indigenous communities that have some level of tourism infrastructure but haven't developed wildlife tourism extensively yet. Help them develop routes and tours that they can do to bring people into their communities, with the idea and the research that we had before, knowing that 200 to 300 people a year was sufficient for these communities in Guyana to make enough income to not depend on any kind of exploitative industry within their forests, and therefore bring a number of additional forest areas into community level protection in Guyana. So one of the things that we've also been working on throughout the pandemic is to scale this model through virtual courses and case studies, working with local operators as well as tourism boards and destination managers, with the idea, as I said, that first of all, many of these destination managers and tourism boards don't know what is currently available in their country or how to develop sustainable tourism or regenerative tourism by basically empowering the indigenous and local community-based efforts. And that we could come and give the experience from 4 different continents, 13 different countries, and explain how this has been done in numerous areas, such that operators around different countries in the world can basically become licensed to do net positive impact tourism anywhere in the world. So that's basically what we've been working on throughout the pandemic, and we'd be happy to share that knowledge with anybody if there's interest, especially for people who are looking at reopening destinations and how to make it in such a way that's really going to keep income in the community and in the country. So that's just a little bit about our team and who's been working on this with me throughout the whole pandemic period. And we'd be happy to hear from you if you have any questions or would like to hear more about what we've been working on. Thank you.
Sophia, thank you so much. What a wonderful presentation. And I really take it to heart what you just offered, which is to share your lessons in how you're facing this crisis with everyone. This will be very useful. And I, on behalf of Peter, I'm sure, I'd like to offer the LT&C website and our platform as a way for you to do so, because it will be extremely useful to everyone. So thanks for that. I have 5 quick comments, but I will have to take leave after that. So thank you so much, everyone, for your participation. I will, as I said in the chat, I will listen to the whole webinar later, and I'll work with our LT&C colleagues to bring all of your lessons. But particularly me, I'll have to leave in a few minutes. But I just wanted to say the following. your story reminded me of another reality on research that could be useful to LT&C partners, which is that of la Fondation de la Jeunesse pour le Développement Durable, which is a French francophone program. What it does, it brings students to communities to help them develop their own business plans. And I think that's something that we could all consider, to ask the research community that has been the partner of many of you already. Look, I mean, I'm facing a difficult situation here now. How about some outreach and helping me now face the situation I'm facing? Bring the good guys you have to help me figure out, for instance, how to diversify my economy. It's something that came to me, and that was great. The other thing, Upwell, I love the name. I'd like to encourage you to franchise your approach. I mean, how can other people in this group or others who are doing wonderful tourism and conservation and research links? I mean, you know, there's Earthwatch, there's others, but I love the way Wallacea approaches that. And I'd like to know if you'd like to consider franchising this operation. That was just a provocation. My other points are, you mentioned you had to change the product. This is something all of us will have to do. New products, whatever. I mean, it can be the same thing, but experienced in a different way, with new protocols, with new attentions. So we all need to produce new products. Absolutely. The times will call for that. And we don't need big volumes. This is the advantage of LT&C examples. We're not talking 5,000 tourists a day that come in a single cruise ship. You know, that's not the kind of support. And finally, I wanted to say that too. I think particularly as Guyana, one of our parties, will speak next, I want to say it's great to hear that Guyana is here speaking. It's great to hear from Sophia that there's been cooperation on that. And I hope that many other parties in the CBD, and I will take that message, that yes, it is in the interest of every developing country in the world to help the indigenous people and local communities that are actually taking care of themselves by offering absolutely autonomous tourism products that help conserve the natural resources of the country. It makes sense to help them, like evidently Guyana is doing. So thank you very much for your opportunity to share with that. And I'll be in touch with you, Peter, later on to continue on how we can take the lessons you're bringing to the discussions in the Convention on Biological Diversity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Oliver. I'll also drop my email in the chat just in case anyone would like to follow up about what we're offering, and happy to chat further. Thanks.
Thank you both. And Oliver has to leave now, regretfully. I will take over now, and by introducing now Anne-Marie Turan, who is the Senior Manager of Destination and Marketing in Guyana Tourism. And you were already introduced. So Anne-Marie, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, you already put up your presentation. Great. We are right. Guyana has been several times already.
Thanks so much, Peter. Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. As Peter mentioned, my name is Anne-Marie. I'm the Senior Manager of Destination Marketing at the Guyana Tourism Authority. For those of you who've never heard of Guyana, we are a small South American nation, just about the size of Idaho in the US, and we're located just below the Caribbean Sea. Although we're geographically in South America, our language is actually English because we were last governed by British colonialists. What about Guyana do you need to know? So our population is roughly about 750,000 people. And above that, 90% lives on the coastland, which leaves our interior lush and ripe for exploration. So because of this, the destination has great and extraordinary travel experiences that you wouldn't necessarily find today. Like, for example, visiting locations and not seeing any sign of human life for days, or having an iconic attraction to yourself, like our Kaitro Falls, which is one of the world's most powerful waterfalls in the world by volume, or even having to travel around the destination without the need of an interpreter because, as I said, English is our official language. As part of our case study that we presented to LT&C, we are calling our program Save Guyana's Wildlife, and I know Sophia alluded to some. So what I'm gonna do is try to go through it as quickly as possible, but then from a government standpoint, I'll share what are some of the things that we have been doing since the pandemic started for our operations. So our first project would be Iwokurama. Iwokurama is 1 million acres of protected rainforest. And within the rainforest, there is an indigenous community who has been managing the resource use for generations. And what we find is that the government has partnered with the Commonwealth Secretariat to give them a portion of Iwokurama to manage sustainably. So you have sustainable forest harvesting that is done and is being monitored by UpWall over a number of years. And it employs the indigenous communities up to this day to monitor those forest harvest practices. It will be interesting to see in 2021, since we weren't able to open for international travel, how the impact on biodiversity has been since the time has passed, because we know that Iwokurama is still doing ongoing research, although it's not with international travelers or international researchers at this point. They're doing it locally at deforestation. The second project is community-led wildlife tourism. Now, through research by anthropologists, the GTA and UpWall, basically we're able to determine the number of tourist visitor nights that is needed to change a perception of the relationship between tourism and conservation in indigenous communities. And basically for us to spread the impact of income in other communities that are not traditionally on the tourism circuit, we decided to work with 3 indigenous communities in the Rupununi and forested areas to develop what we call community-led and owned wildlife tourism offerings. So basically, as Sophia alluded to, this includes developing week-long and multi-week group itineraries that would encourage people to travel to the destination, but to also learn. And on the back end of it, UpWall will be doing various research to see the impact of travel on basically the impact of travel that these visitors will have when they visit the destination. And this was to start in 2020, but because of the pandemic, we had to push it back for a 2021 date. So we are looking to launch this and to do so with an international marketing campaign, and also to train local DMCs and tour operators to offer these tours as a long-term benefit to these communities. So we have some operators who already are selling traditional tourism circuits, but seeing the impact and the positive benefits that communities will be getting from doing this, we want to ensure that they're reaching out to these communities who are not necessarily in the tourism space to sell them in 2021 and beyond. So I've taken out a lot of what I wanted to say with regards to most of these projects, but I wanted to highlight what are some of the things from a government's perspective that we've been doing. Although I've mentioned this, we have diversified product offerings with tour operators, and we are looking at domestic tourism as opposed to attracting international travel at the moment. We know, like many destinations, domestic travel has been something that everybody's looking to do, and we have opened various pockets of the destination for people to travel in very safely. We're also looking at having businesses and lodges certified based on best practices that we've been having with WTO and some other organizations internationally that we've been taking the examples from. We've also been providing training as well as hygiene and sanitation protocols and products to communities and lodges so that they're prepared for when international travel opens. They have all the systems in place to welcome visitors. We've also reached out for funding with the IDB and the Adventure Travel Conservation Fund to support conservation efforts in communities where they had to let go of guides, or they were doing conservation efforts for bird watching or turtle conservation. So we've been looking at those options in the interim over the past couple of months. We've also, as a government, tried to provide small business grants or small business loans to small businesses who fall within a certain criterion category. So they've been able to approach our Ministry of Finance to get funding for keeping employees on board, or for buying hygiene and sanitation products so that they can implement it within their businesses. We're also in the process of re-inspecting businesses, especially lodges and tour operators, because based on our national measures, they're not allowed to open right now. And it's a little bit unfair for them. So we're working very keenly with them to ensure that they have the systems in place so that when international travelers start coming back to the destination, we're well and able to receive them. And with that, I will close the presentation.
Thank you very much, Anne-Marie. Impressive example. And I would also remind everyone to use our chat box to send specific questions to Anne-Marie and all the other speakers. We are running a little bit late, so I will just go further and change the continent and go over to Africa, to Rwanda, where we have Greg Bakunzi, who is a founding member actually of LT&C, long time with us, and has major experience also working with his local community and supporting a number of national parks around his place, but not only in Rwanda, but also in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda. Greg, are you there? I hope he is. Can't see him at the moment. We heard also from Dallas that his electricity broke down, and that happens sometimes also in Rwanda. So it looks like that he is not there. The only thing I can do is that I try to show his presentation myself, as much as I know about his thing. And maybe he is coming back in the meantime. So I will share my presentation, his presentation, which is, wait a minute, where do I find it?
While you're finding it, Peter, I was
Please.
I was just going to comment on, you know, the work that we've been doing with GTA and Guyana's government really exemplifying what it means to invest in and support the organizations and the communities that are already working kind of at the heart of conservation and tourism. I think they've really been a pioneer and an example of how destination managers and governments can look to the, you know, the few businesses that are doing things right, as Oliver put it, and put the money there such that when, you know, when people can start coming back and when international tourism starts again, it really focuses on the right businesses and the ones that have the largest positive impact.
Thank you, Sophia. So I will try very briefly to go through the slides which Greg Bakunzi supplied to us and what I know about his location. I have been there myself. He is running actually 2 companies. One is called Amahoro Tours, which invites travelers and visitors from all around the world. And they organize trips to the national parks of the Virunga mountain chain, where you have the mountain gorillas as a major attraction. And by doing this, he works very closely together with these national park authorities, both in DRC and Uganda and Rwanda. And on the other side, he has a company called Red Rocks, which is more locally, it's a campsite where he has a lot of events and where the income is also supporting a direct part of the local community with their gardening and other things. I have seen that, and he arranges at his Red Rock sites a number of events, mainly also cultural and art events, and brings local artists and local people together to show also foreign tourists what they do. So, as I read here also, Red Rocks Rwanda was created to provide alternative avenues for local communities living around the Volcano National Park to earn income, thereby diverting the undue pressure that had previously been put on the natural resources for illegal activities like poaching and deforestation of the national park, and also preserving our cultural heritage for the future generations. Greg Bakunzi with his company is also every year involved in what they call the gorilla naming ceremony, where celebrities from all over the world are coming and always name a new gorilla after one of the celebrities. One has been also recently named after Greg Bakunzi himself. So he is seen as a real important person. So all these cultural activities of Red Rocks Rwanda is probably at this Corona times also particularly important, as people can still get engaged and do tourism on a more local and regional basis. So here are some pictures of his traditional cultural dance performances, basket waving. He is also involved in botanical gardens around him. Several art galleries are also around in his settlement, and he is also involved in student exchange programs. And this is mainly locally, regionally, and nationally in Rwanda. So that helps him also to survive with his international business. Here are other activities. He is showing us pottery lessons, painting and drawing, local village walks. So he is extremely active, and I have not heard any word of pessimism from him, or that he is giving up his company. He is quite the opposite. He is a positive thinking person and invents all the time new activities, and will certainly survive this Corona crisis. He is showing some of his campsites. And I think that is all what I can tell at the moment. As I have been there myself, I really can recommend that you're getting in touch also with him directly. And that is also the message I want to bring all over for all the presenters and all the ones which are listening to us. LT&C is there mainly also to link not only between tourism and conservation in general, but also between our members. And it is our main thought that the brilliant LT&C examples, which we have already on our website, which is presented and should be seen by everyone, that also those which are offering these excellent examples are thinking actively with whom they could partner and where they could in some way export their LT&C example. And I would in particular this way end this presentation session and going over the discussions by asking you to bring also forward your questions and probably focus also on the issue, how can you link up to those examples which you heard of? How can you do yourself and a step towards another partner which you would like to learn from your example? I just have to find out how I can stop my sharing the screen here. Can't see my arrow here. But let's start. Who is wanting to start with a question? And you can also put your questions in the chat so we can look at them and can see who can answer best of them.
I have a question about Red Rocks. Just
Sophia.
given we've seen, for example, local tourism growing really significantly within countries as people are finally able to actually visit areas that only international tourists are usually able to visit. For example, in Ecuador, a lot of Ecuadorians are going to the Galapagos for the first time. So I wanted to know, are there Rwandans going to see the gorillas now that international tourists aren't able to go? Because I realize it's a very expensive visit for good reason.
Yes, it is. It's very expensive, and to see the gorillas is also has a different price in the different countries. To see a gorilla in Rwanda is the most expensive. I think it cost about $1,200. and the least expensive and most important on the other side, because they depend on those visits, is to go to the Democratic Republic of Congo, to the Virunga National Park. Every foreign minister is warning tourists to go there at all because it's a conflict area. But Greg Bakunzi and others are still organizing trips there, and it is essential for the survival of that park. In the Virunga National Park exists also the Virunga Foundation, which is a UK and US based company, which works very closely together with the national park authorities, and also make sure that the revenues coming from these gorilla trips and the being accommodated at that place is also benefiting the local communities. When I was there once, we had also an expert on African agriculture with us, a member of LT&C, and he looked at the agriculture activities of the surrounding communities and was extremely impressed and thought that was one of the best he have seen in Africa. So if you look at this place, and if you're not following the warnings of others to go there, then it really helps to that not only the mountain gorillas survive, but also the local communities is supporting the national park because they're benefiting of that. I think they have also closed down at the present time the corona, with the corona crisis, the park. But as soon as it opens, Greg Bakunzi can certainly inform us about that, and will help everyone who's interested to get an answer on your question. Regretfully, he is not with us at the moment. So probably others are bringing questions to the other presenters, which are still with us. Anybody who wants to speak? Oh, there, Red Rocks is, Greg Bakunzi is back with us. Hello,
Yeah,
Greg.
yeah, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm sorry, my connection was really bad, but yeah, now I'm back. I can do a quick presentation anyway before I lose it again.
I have tried to show your slides and interpret and have answered some questions, but probably
okay.
You can say a few words how you actually survived the corona crisis.
Okay, yeah. The way how we are surviving with Red Rocks in the Cultural Center now these days is we are just working on like bringing in, doing some workshops and trying also to attract the domestic tourism, which is kind of really getting bigger here in our country, and whereby also we are trying to discover more tourism products. And from what we have already discovered is that if conservation is well managed by the local communities, it would be another big industry on top of the tourism industry that we have been carrying on. If we manage it well. And what we did now, we are bringing all our community members to have like some workshops and also trying to work out what else can be the supplement of our tourism, which has been also affected, and how can we drive this in parallel with conservation. So we started an art center, and this art center is purposely there for conservation. So we call it Red Rocks Art for Conservation. And we are trying also to take this into the local communities, schools, also trying to teach the younger generation. I would call it life skills. And with all these life skills, they are all they are all attached, connected to tourism and conservation within our community and at the same time in our region. That's how we are surviving about we on that. In short, as I have, as Peter might have also told you about, we are an ecotourism company, and our model is to see how can the local communities benefit from tourism and conservation. So we are not only, I like to the point Sophie raised, we don't want to depend on grants, but we want to depend on incoming generating projects. This could be through conservation, this could be, of course, through tourism, but that's what we want to build. When I saw her presentation and I heard what she was really saying, I was much attracted by that. And I wish most of the organizations would be really focusing on that, where they engage the local communities, like the way how we are trying to do it, so that they start really benefiting on both sides, not only showing them that they are just doing it as a non-profit, but at the same time, they do it as an incoming generating project. This would help us to conserve our nature and to conserve our product, at the same time, our history and culture. Anyway, so how did it come to be? Red Rocks was created to provide an alternative avenue for local communities living around the Volcano National Park. Income there by diverting unused pressure that had previously been put on the nature resources through illegal activities like poaching. So what we tried to do, we tried to get all these people who used to go inside the park to get some firewood, do the poaching, and to get some bees and try to put some beehives in. So we have created some different cooperatives that have got bees, and they also do some crafts which they are selling, and now they have started getting direct income. And with this direct income, it has really helped them. And our plan is to see how can we set up more community conservation centers around the country. We started with 3 of them, and so far we have managed this year, even though it was a difficult time, but we have also managed to set up 2 more community conservation centers that we are going to oversee. And the whole idea of these community centers is to spread the word of tourism and conservation within the different parts of the country.
Thank you very much, Greg. Are there any immediate questions to Greg? Otherwise, we have only 5 minutes left, and you should also have the chance to talk to others. Any direct questions to Greg Bakunzi, as he is with us again? Who wants to speak and needs only to unmute their voice? If there's nobody else at the moment with questions, then we will end this session here. And I thank you all for your great presentations. And there will be certainly a lot of exchange of communication between all our members and LT&C example providers. Thank you very much. And you are invited to go also on our next session, which we will organize in January. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.